If you're just tuning in, this is part 2 of episode 5. So welcome back if you've already completed part 1, or if you're new here, go back and listen to the last episode before continuing.
So at that time, I started looking into what it would take to get a master's.
Yeah.
And I looked in a bunch of states, California, Arizona, Utah, to name a few. And I actually found that in Arizona, there was one spot left for the Arizona State University MFT program starting
for that fall.
And this was end of July. And so
that was 1 month.
Yeah.
And if you have never applied to graduate school, it is usually at least a year process.
Yes. All of the people that were starting that fall had been already planning this for a year.
Yes.
And so I reached out to my referral letters, reference letters, and
like within 3 days you had submitted everything.
Yes. And then I had an interview. It was over the phone with the directors of the ASU MFT program. And I think that they were quite worried. They were like, are you sure? Like,
are you sure you're ready to?
You will have to move states. You will have to get student loans because you're going to be an out of state. You will have to commit to this thing all within a month. Like, are you ready for that? And I appreciate them asking that, though I am so impulsive that it was like absolutely up my nature.
For most normal people, they would have been very rightly concerned, but we lived in a tiny home in a box truck. You know
weird.
What I mean? Like, we're like, I don't want to pay $1,000 a month for rent. Let's build a tiny home instead. You know what I mean?
Let's live in 80 square feet. No, for real. We're so weird. And I remember you said to me, you were very supportive, and you had one stipulation. You said, as long as you do this long enough to pay off your student loans. And I think that was because you were like, how do you know you even want to be a therapist? Like I hadn't job shadowed. I hadn't interviewed anybody like this. I guess I had interviewed the friend's mom, our mutual friend. But I hadn't like done any other like research into this. It was very impulsive.
Very impulsive. But but again, like it wasn't even really about the money. It was more about just you recognize the commitment, right? That's more of the energy, and you were like, yes, I will. And so we're like, let's do it. So
and you were so supportive. Like I want to say, like you were not like holding me back or anything. You were very much like, this is an absolute yes. I'm ready for this.
I'll turn down my job that I just got extended.
But like commit.
Yeah.
It was almost like a bet.
Yeah.
Like
bet. You want to be a therapist? Bet.
Yeah. And I was like, yeah. And so by the time I had the interview and it was a week before the program was supposed to start, like the first day of class and the semester, I guess. And I still hadn't heard back. And we were at the point where we were still in California in our tiny home, and we had a bunch of things in Utah.
If we were going to move to Arizona, we would need to go to Utah to recover these things to have a life in Arizona. And you can't live in a box truck in Arizona.
Because it's 110 degrees.
Yeah.
And so we were like, okay, we have these jobs. We've got this in Arizona. We don't even know if we're able, but let's go. Because this is a like point of no return. Like we can't keep living here and make it to Arizona in time if we don't leave today.
So without knowing whether you got in or not, with 2 weeks to go when you first applied, and now it's 1 week to go.
1 week before.
We pack up everything, which isn't a lot in a tiny home, and we start trekking back to Utah. Yes. And halfway through,
I luckily had service in wherever we were in California on the edge, right between there and Nevada. And I looked at my email and saw that I had a congratulations, you've been accepted.
And it felt like fate.
It
felt like destiny. It did. The whole thing felt like that.
Yes, I still feel that way about it. Because honestly, it is the perfect fit for me. And I had no idea. And I made this decision on pure impulse.
Yeah. And I think we should spend a future episode talking specifically about both our relationship transformation during your time in college, our time in our grad program, as well as, you know, how you individually and as a relationship, how you evolved and we evolved and whatnot. But you got accepted, you got in.
Yep.
Your student loan, that one semester was $28,000.
Yep.
And so I did my ultimate best to get a job at ASU.
Yep.
Which I succeeded in.
Yes.
To my great surprise, I applied to a success coaching job. I was the only person there who did not have a master's degree. Mm-hmm. Most of them had masters or PhDs. And because of my imposter syndrome that I feel, my slick tongue and my charming wink and smile got me into this job that I didn't feel really qualified for. But anyway, so I did that to help you
pay for
down
my college.
Because then you became an in-state student.
Yeah, because if you work there, then you get discounted tuition if you're the spouse of a person that works there.
Right.
And it took my semesters from 28,000 to 3,000.
Yeah.
So
huge.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
I actually think that a big theme of our relationship, which again we can always get into another time, is that we're in it together. We have needed each other and relied on each other to get to where we are at.
Yes.
And that's why I feel like my success is so much your success and vice versa, because we have just needed that like teamwork and collaboration to pull this off.
Absolutely. And that provider role has swung back and forth.
Yes.
The emotional support, all these different things. You're absolutely right. And so I get an MBA because I'm going there. True. You're going there.
You're like, I'll get discounted master's degree.
Sure. Like, I was going to wait a while before I got my MBA, but I'm here. So let's do this. So I get my MBA, and which was awesome. Such a great time. You graduate, and there's this specific clinic in Utah that you want to go work for.
Yeah.
And so,
well, I think we should note that I was still very young when I graduated. 23 was when I graduated.
With your master's.
With my master's.
23 years old. Yeah.
And wow. I was still not ready to have children. And so it was like we were going to have career life. Like we're about to graduate with your MBA. I had my master's, and we were actually in Arizona for a year before this all happened. And coincidentally enough, I don't know if you remember, but we started talking about getting PhDs.
We did.
Because it's always something we've always wanted to have PhDs.
Yes.
And to pull that off, we knew if we wanted to do that, plus have kids, that we needed to be in Arizona or Utah.
Yep.
Because of the universities around that had both of our programs, and then also because like close-ish to family.
Our networks and just a lot of things, yeah.
And then at that same time, I had like a ton of mental health flare-ups. Fast forward, found out I have OCD. I've been like in therapy for that, but I was having a massive flare-up at the time.
Yeah.
And so it was
kind of like my deep dark depression, right? It's like right when I graduated, I dived into this. You had graduated
and had I mean, to be fair, my OCD flare up probably started in grad school because of the stress.
But you were so focused on graduating that I think there was a relapse, or not relapse, a delayed impact. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, we were like, let's choose Utah. I think we just felt like there wasn't a lot that was working for us in Arizona at the time, because mentally I was so unwell and there was just so much happening there. And when we decided Utah, it's funny because I had literally looked up BYU's program, which also fast forward is now what I've just applied to for the PhD. And to get a job as a therapist here, you have to get a Utah license. That seamlessly worked out really a lot better than I ever anticipated, which I could also get into another time. But then it was a job for like a clinic, and I did find a clinic that I was very interested in working in. And
they wanted to hire an MFT specialist because they didn't have one.
They didn't have like a couples therapist or like a relationship therapist. And we came here for one day to do interviews, and I interviewed at 3 places. One of them went so bad, like worst interview I've ever had in my life.
Awkward AF.
Really bad. And now I see that person around in the community, and it sometimes is like, do you remember me? I hope you don't. That I'll get into that another time too. But the one place I wanted to work offered me the job on the spot, which felt like too good.
And they paid for your travel expenses, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, felt too good to be true. But I went for it. And what did you have in mind with that piece?
Oh no, just that's why we moved to Utah.
Yeah.
That's what brought us back here. And then I applied to work at the university after a lot of career disappointment. I got my MBA. And again, I've got entrepreneurial background. So my resume was very generalist. And with my MBA, it kind of disqualified me from a lot of entry-level positions because they would have to overpay me to do more of that entry level or like early management. But I didn't have the specialist experience in like a tech field or a healthcare or, whatever. I didn't have specialty experience. And so they're like, well, we can't hire you because you don't have 3 to 5 years in this field. And so that was really frustrating. It was really hard. When we moved back to Utah, it took me quite a few. I applied to like 120 jobs, and I used ASU's Career Center. So it wasn't like I was garbage at applying to places. And I'm a great interviewer. Oh, excuse me. Just like jinx myself there. I'm a good, I'm just burping my interviews, just ripping it. So anyway, I went through another really hard career shift, and fortunately I was able to become a recruiter and admissions counselor at UVU with my previous experience at ASU. And that rolled into an adjunct teaching position at the university, teaching professional business presentations. And that kind of dipped back into my entrepreneurial background, a lot of my presenting career and different things that I would do there. And then that has also evolved 2.5 years later to becoming a full-time lecturer, marketing faculty at Utah Valley University, which is a dream come true for me, truthfully.
Yeah, for as long as I've known you, you have wanted to be a professor.
Yeah.
And to watch you get to this point has been incredible. And I'm so, so glad that you have like this, I guess, confirmation of like, this is where you deserve to be and where you want to be.
This podcast only provides information. It's not a viable replacement for a therapy session. If you need help or have an emergency, contact your local mental health authority. Our hosts are experts on mental health. Many of our guests are too. This podcast does not provide expert advice. It's just entertainment, baby. Dates and places have changed. This podcast should never replace real therapy.
That's fantastic. And then, so while I was working on getting there, you were working on getting licensed as a fully independent marriage and family therapist.
There's like 3 phases as a therapist. Best way to conceptualize it. You have like your intern phase, your associate phase, or quote unquote unlicensed phase. But as an MFT, it's an associate. And then your fully licensed phase.
Yeah. So you were going through that process. You started working at another clinic in conjunction with your first clinic to get more marriage and family therapy hours because you were doing a lot of individuals at the first clinic.
Yeah.
And when you got close to your independent licensure, you were talking with the original clinic about pay. You know, what could you expect as a therapist with X amount of years who's fully independent? We had done some research on what standard pay was for that type of thing, especially because you were going to be the specialist for this clinic. You're hoping to at least get the average, which wasn't a big ask. And they came and lowballed you super hard.
Yeah. And I think for me, to keep it really simple and short, I did not defend my worth and value very well, because that experience brought up a lot of old narratives, you could say, that I have of like authority, male authority, things like that. And so I wasn't really fully stepping into my own and like advocating for myself. So It was just really, it was not a good experience for me.
And it wasn't like you were being greedy. You know, you're not a therapist because you want to be a millionaire. You know, you just honestly wanted equal compensation.
Yes.
And felt like you were being discriminated against.
A fair wage.
Because of your gender and your age and a bunch of other factors. And this clinic ended up being a lot more cutthroat and corporate than what you had initially thought.
Or experienced at other clinics.
Yeah. And so you said, you know what? I want to go back to the type of system I had in Arizona with Arizona Marriage and Family Therapy.
Yep.
And with my business background and your clinical experience, we decided to open our own marriage and family therapy clinic.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a very wild year of marriage, because if you think about that year of marriage, we, let's see, I was 26 probably.
Mm-hmm.
So we were married
26, yeah.
6 years at this point. But at the beginning, first half of that, we were trying to buy this house that we are in.
Yep.
And I worked 2 clinics and you worked 2 jobs.
Yep.
Just to get into this house.
Yep. That was, and full time, like a full time and a part time on top of that. It was crazy.
Yes. And then that, like, we were in the house for a few months, and then we started the clinic together. And like, so then
you were working at 3 clinics at one time.
At one point I was working 3, my own private practice, and then the 2 different ones that I had worked at for a year prior, over a year prior. So I was working 3 jobs, and you were still working, I think at the time you were still working 2, or you were about to work 2 again because of your professor. Like, anyway, it was very, like, it was a lot, but that is so much our speed. It's
totally
funny.
Full send as fast as possible, you know, trying to make the most with what we have.
Yeah.
And it was a huge success. And there's so many stories we could dive into in this in between time, but just to bring this full circle back to the podcast. So we start the clinic, and one thing that we've always felt is so important is normalizing couples therapy.
Yes.
And talking about our relationships and being open and honest and transparent with both our mental health struggles and how that plays out in a relationship, the growth and the healing, the bonding and the connection that comes with that. And also, and just, you know, making it fun and approachable and easy to talk about instead of the super heavy, dark, burdensome, laborious thing. Instead, we wanted to introduce mental health topics, relationship topics in a fun, approachable way. So we started It Takes Two in honor of our favorite video game.
Yeah.
The co-op game It Takes Two, where it's about a couple who's on the verge of divorce.
Yeah.
And through their adventures and their hardships and their joint values, they reconnect. And it's a great game, great story. And so we just want to carry that forward. So when we first started this podcast, we piloted it. Our first episode took so much, and we were doing all these different things that you mentioned before. We waited a year, we relaunched it again, and it was great. We were having so much fun with it. It just it was in a format that just wasn't sustainable for what we were wanting to do. And with the help of some new resources, some advancements in our own careers, there's going to be a lot more freedom and time to be able to dedicate more of our life to sharing this content with you.
Yeah.
Which is why we've relaunched for the third and hopefully final time.
I really hope, because it is just, it's awesome. Like, it's so great to just talk together about these things. And I think that we have really great dynamic. I think you as listeners are really going to enjoy it. The more like broken down casual nature that are turning it into, I think you're really gonna love it. So
yeah, more conversational, more topical.
Yeah.
We'll still touch on clinical subjects. We'll throw some definitions in there, some research.
Definitely.
But we're going to make it more current, more based on what's happening in the world day to day, week to week. We'll dip into pop culture, as we've mentioned.
Yeah.
Clarissa's just wrapping up a different podcast.
Yeah.
Fun at Parties. So shout out to you if you're joining our podcast from the Fun at Parties podcast. Where they're breaking down Gilmore Girls. So we might talk about Lorelai and Rory's relationship.
Yes.
And some of those things. Whereas we're going to talk about The Bachelor. We want to talk about different trends on social media. Maybe Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift's relationship. I was gonna say, like, maybe
some celebrity relationships.
Yeah.
Break down some things from a therapy clinical perspective. But also, like, I think to speak to current times, like right now it's the holidays. So like a big thing that I wanted to bring up, at least for a small portion of this podcast, is talking about the holidays. I think that it is a really interesting time of year for everybody, and maybe we'll dive into it more next time. But I think to give bits of it today, what do you think about?
Yeah. Well, first, just want to, if you have any topics or celebrity couples or anything like that you want us to cover, shoot us a message on socials or
current
an email. Or leave us a comment in the YouTube, or there's a bunch of different ways you can contact us. But yeah, please let us know. We'd love to cover whatever you're interested in. As far as the holidays, let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the holidays. Okay, so the question I have for you, Clarissa, is the in-law trope, that idea that the in-laws just cause so much stress and pain and havoc and drama, is that just a television cliche, or is there truth behind that claim? Do in-laws cause more havoc, especially around the holidays, than not?
This is just the best topic ever, because it is all the things. It's couples, it's families, it's the holidays, which I love. And
I hate, because I'm the Grinch.
Yes, you are. I'm not gonna lie. But I'm converting you slowly but
it's
surely.
True. My heart has grown 3 sizes the last couple years.
I don't think it's a one size fits all. I don't think everybody has this problem. I actually think there are some functioning families out there that successfully launched their children into adulthood and into allowing their children to have their own family units and identities and differentiation. I believe those families are out there. Because of the nature of therapy, I am seeing people who are in trouble and are struggling. And so as far as the sample size from the therapy perspective, it is a pretty rampant issue, because I'm seeing people who are coming in with issues. Like, it's just the nature.
From a statistical point of view, do you see an increase in clients around the holidays?
Yes and no. Yes, because there's problems that are specific to this time of year and unique to this time of year, such as this, but also like seasonal depression and other things.
Yeah.
Finances, stuff like that.
Sure.
But I would say also no, because therapy usually ebbs and flows with the structure of people's lives. So when people have a lot of structure in their lives, like school is in session and things like that, they're usually coming to therapy more.
So people are coming in less because they're on vacation or they have family, like in-laws in town.
Around, holiday parties, kids have like time off from school. It's the same with summer. Summer is usually a little bit slower as well.
Yeah.
Just because of that. People are traveling for summer vacation and their kids are out of school. So yeah, I would usually say the busy times are actually during school years.
But you do see that almost replaced with an increase from clients who are like, we are now in crisis because Aunt Sandra came and the things that she was saying, or my father-in-law Harold said this, and my partner didn't do anything. Those types of conflicts can really flare up.
Yeah, and also like something specific to Utah is like the holidays are really wrapped in faith and religion. And so I think there's a lot of people who also that brings up a lot for them during this time of year, whatever spectrum of religion they're on. But it does like that can bring up an increase in clients as well. But coming back to the in-law trope, it is definitely a thing. Because again, you grow up with this one frame of mind of like, this is how family is. And then you get married and you see that that's not how family is. There's actually lots of ways that family looks for like just so many options.
Yeah.
And that each family there's themes, but there's also a lot of uniqueness between each family. And so...
And just as for you and I, as an example, like I'm one of 4 siblings, and we have much more diffused boundaries, and especially with my parents at the time. And mesh, thank you.
Well, it's the same thing.
Okay, yeah. So we were overly involved. We knew everything about each other's lives, and your family, then my in-laws, was a complete opposite. It was super distanced, very
disengaged, and distant. You're right, and that
was hard.
Yeah, and it's almost like there was downsides and upside. There is downsides and upsides to both.
Yes,
it would be awesome if, in some perfect world, our families were a lovely balance of clear boundaries and secure relationships, but that's just not the case in our situation. And yeah, it's really interesting to see how it plays out during the holidays.
So what would you say is probably the most common bit of guidance you give couples who are struggling with in-laws?
Oof. Okay. I think that this is like one of my hot takes that sometimes clients do not like to hear.
Ooh. Spicy.
I think that people really want their partner to love their family. And so they do whatever it takes to get that. And I just think that the best thing to do is, instead of pursuing that and like trying to force that connection in that relationship, it's actually best to say, I'll use us so that it's easiest.
Sure.
But it's best to be like, hey, Charles, that's your family. You get to have whatever relationship you want with them. And I also get to have whatever relationship I want with your family. And then vice versa for my family. And then I think, to the way that it should run, is that you are the leader in the couple for that family. So you are the leader for the two of us in regards to your family. So in communication, in setting plans, stuff like that, you are like the representative between the two of us, because they're your family. You know how they communicate, stuff like that. But in that, I still have the choice to have whatever involvement that I want in your family.
Or lack of involvement.
So then vice versa, I'm the leader in regards to my family. I set up all of those things. And it's not hey, Charles, you have to be. My family has a holiday party, usually on the 23rd, every single year of December. And I don't say, hey, Charles, you have to be at this party. I'm our representative. I say, hey, Charles, the party's on the 23rd. Just letting you know, I hope you'll be there. Like, it's almost like I'm inviting you to my family party.
Yeah.
And you still have the autonomy to say yes or no.
I am certain that couples are like, well, no, they're family. You're obligated to go. And I could see a lot of people feeling resistance towards that. And that's probably why you were saying a lot of clients don't like this guidance.
Yes. But it is so much the pursuer, withdrawer, and great paradox in the holiday setting. And what I mean by that is when you try and force this connection, you're actually creating more damage and usually like more discord and distancing between your spouse and your family versus if you, great paradox, like let go and allow your partner to opt in or out and have autonomy and make their own choices in regards to like your family plans, then they're actually more willing and more interested because it's not a you have to, you're forced to. It's a I would love for you to be there. You're invited. It feels more inviting. It feels more comfortable than a like force. And
I'm going to be in a way better mood if I'm going to your family event, not feeling like, oh, I have to be here. I'm obligated to be here. And that's the only reason. Yeah. If I choose to go because you've invited me and I'm like, yeah, I'll go.
Yeah.
And I can leave whenever I want. Yep. I have that freedom. You know, I go there and I end up having a great time. Or if I don't have a great time, I don't feel guilty leaving.
Exactly. And I'm not mad at you.
Yes.
Because that's the expectation. The expectation is that you get to choose because you are a grown adult and this isn't your family. You didn't grow up with this innate love. We put up with a lot for our own families because there is an innate bond being blood related and being connected in that way, an attachment that you just can't find in other situations. Well, you can't manufacture, I guess you could say, in other situations. It takes time.
Yeah. And I just to add, I think we need to really touch on this because I know I didn't realize this until years into our marriage, is that to expect you to view my family with the same lens that I have, dismissing patterns of behavior that are not okay.
Yeah.
That you should just be okay with these boundaries being crossed, or you should just be okay with this type of interaction.
Right.
Because I am, is grotesquely wrong. And it happens all the time.
All the time.
I had 25 years of a relationship with my family. Yeah. And you had less than a year. And I am expecting you to treat my family the same way I treat them. That's absurd.
Yeah.
But we do. That's such a normal thing.
That's the expectation. That's the expectation.
Why don't you love my family? I love them. Do you not love me? You know what I mean?
Yes,
like there can be those things.
It's doing such a disservice to couples and family relationships because just when we were talking about what is recommended, just think about it. Like all the scenarios, I'm not mad at you. The expectation is like you get to choose. Obviously, if you were like, I don't actually want to go, I'd be bummed.
Sure.
Like it's valid to be like bummed, but when the expectation isn't there, it creates way less conflict for the couple. And then also it's like way better for your relationship with my family because then it's on your terms and then you're able to bond with them and grow with them in a more natural way.
Sure. So what happens if there's one couple that the couple gets along, or excuse me, one family that the couple gets along with really well? Everybody's homies. They're spending way more time, 80% of the family time with this family because you just as a couple get along better with them or whatever. But the partner feels like it's inequitable, or the family that they don't get along with as well, that other side is complaining or being like, you're always going, like you go on vacations with them or you spend holidays with them or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, how do you address that with that inequitability if the partnership really does get along better with one family versus another?
Yeah, it's really common. And honestly, like I feel for those people. Like that is really hard. And I think the best way to approach it is to first not compare. Like do not compare. Do not try and find the perfect exact equal.
Like 50-50.
Yeah. And then it's more of the onus, it should be on you. If you feel like you are not close with your family, but close with your in-laws, and you want your partner to be close with your family in this scenario, then the onus is on you to figure out what would it take to mend or repair those relationships for your partner and you to be close with them and be around them more.
Yeah.
And I will say, giant caveat. Sometimes that doesn't work out. And I think that there are some times where people need to fully grieve that their family relationships aren't what they hoped for or what they maybe expected.
Yeah.
Because maybe you thought your family was really close until you got married, and then you see what an actual family closeness is like. And I think that you need to grieve that process if there really isn't anything that can change.
Yeah. I also think prior to marriage, it's an extremely important conversation to have.
Yeah.
How important is closeness with family? What is the expectation for time spent? Because, I mean, we've seen it again in pop culture. I think there's lots of instances on Love is Blind, The Bachelor, all these other shows where one family is very enmeshed.
Yeah.
And they're like grilling the other partner or like the fiance to be, and they're like, are you okay spending every single weekend with us at dinner together? You know what I mean? And then they're like, oh my gosh, like, no, this is so different. Because I think it's okay for couples to say that I'm not compatible with that.
Yeah.
And it's just not worth it to go through years of marriage if you knew early on that you had this expectation. And that honestly goes for just about anything.
Yeah.
Children.
Yeah.
Careers.
Yeah.
All those things.
Yeah. And I think that if you tackle these important topics while dating, it does set you up for better success. Even if you find an incompatibility, I would say that doesn't mean that you can't be together. I think that means that you know that you're already informed that that's going to be a growth spot for your relationship and that it's going to be a sensitive thing that you need to like do the proper maintenance on.
Yes.
Versus like if you find out, I mean, there's clearly things you should break up for, but I'm just talking the things of like, there might be things that you're like, I really don't like this, but it's not something that I want to lose you over. And so therefore, you're just more informed. Like, it's still something you should tackle. For
sure. A great example is, what if my career moves me across the country away from your family?
Yeah.
How do you feel about that, right? Like those types of things.
Right.
Just circling back to the holidays, I actually wanted to know what the robot said about it. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and ask our good friend ChatGPT, are in-laws actually more terrible during the holidays, or is that just a myth? We're going to confirm or reject what you have said. Our systems have detected unusual activity from your system. Please try again later. Okay. Let's try again. Are in-laws worse during the holidays, or is that a myth? The perception of in-laws being worse during the holidays can vary greatly from person to person, family to family. It's not so much a universal truth as it is a common trope or stereotype often portrayed in media and entertainment. Hey.
Ayo.
In reality, the dynamics with in-laws during the holidays depend on several factors: existing relationships, holiday stress. We didn't even talk about holiday stress.
Oh, yeah, we didn't.
It's just those hard relationships just get way harder when there's cooking and cleaning and hosting and, oh my gosh, differing traditions and expectations.
Yep.
Increased interaction, like for an introvert like me, being overexposed. Individual personalities. And this doesn't say this here on ChatGPT, but you think about political, religious, like all these different things. And then Chat wraps it up with, it's important to approach each situation uniquely, not generalize based on stereotypes. Open communication, setting boundaries, having realistic expectations can help in navigating these relationships during the holiday season.
The AI robot sounds just like my university professors because...
Well, maybe they got trained by your university professor. I don't know.
Because one of the most, like... this is, as a therapist, you will understand this. When you go to college, you'll ask your professor, well, what about this situation? And almost always the response from your professor, your supervisors, whatever, is it depends.
Yep.
You need to get a full assessment of a problem before you make any assumption like that. But I think that there are enough patterns like what it's reading that we can say that it is common.
Yeah, I'm going to insert a shameless plug for couples therapy here. If you can only get so much general information that's helpful on the internet, but to be able to answer that it depends with context and circumstances and all the variables in your life, you need a professional's help.
Yeah.
Oftentimes it's hard to break out of your own perceptions, your own egocentrism, even as a couple, like your joint perception, and have a third party voice, put a voice in here and say, hey, I'm seeing this and that. Sounds like you need to set better boundaries. Sounds like these are some things we need to address with the in-law, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
So shameless plug for couples therapy. It's worth it. Even if it's just for a couple sessions for stressful situations like this. If there is a pattern of trial during the holidays, which we've experienced in a big way, dipping back into my Grinchiness, just usually there's so much stress around the holidays that it ends up completely wiping out any holiday spirit I have. But yeah, I mean, if that's a pattern, it's great to have a professional to help navigate that. Yeah.
I think it is. Couples therapy is so fun. You I mean, it's also really hard and stressful and, difficult, but it is so fun to psychoanalyze your relationship and the ways that you're different and how things affect things, like how the dynamics affect things. So yeah, I would say it's highly recommended. Even just a session or two here and there, just as like a little tune-up or we just want to talk about ourselves.
You set new goals for the next 6 months. I love that.
Yeah.
Such a good idea.
I love when couples come in and they just want to brag about how well they're doing. Like that too feels so good to come in and you talk to a stranger and you just tell the stranger about how great your relationship is. Like that feels really good. And as a therapist, like I give you my entire listening ear for your story, and so it's just a really good format.
Good, bad, anywhere in between.
Absolutely,
it's valuable.
Yeah. So
I know we talked about doing the Golden Bachelor.
Right.
I think we're out of time.
I think that we should stop here. I think that because we're going to be doing things weekly, we will touch on the Golden Bachelor eventually, as in next week probably, because I think that it will have been the finale.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'll double check on that. But we should watch it before next session. Next
that's what we should call this.
Next episode.
Next session. Yeah.
And then I think that there are probably more holiday things that we could touch on.
Sure.
That I would love to circle back to, because I know I'm just going to get ahead of it before people even ask me, because I'm time traveling into the future and thinking of what people are going to ask.
You're great at this, by the way.
Yeah. I know people are going to say, well, what about if you have kids? How do you handle the in-laws if you have kids? Your ideas sound so great, Clarissa, but
they're idealistic.
They're better when it's just the two of you. And I get that, and we could always touch on that. And I think that my answers will not be what everyone loves to hear. But I also think that it's from my perspective.
Not
clinical perspective.
It's funny you said my perspective, because I was actually going to say the opposite. It's not Clarissa's subjective opinion.
Yeah.
It is professional, licensed marriage and family therapist with clinical research that validates these concepts to be an effective way to have healthier relationships with your family.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I was in my therapist identity. So when said my perspective,
the therapist identity.
I meant the clinical experience. I've been a therapist for 6 years, which is so wild when I sit and think about it. And I have done couples therapy the entire 6 years. That has been my specialty. And so I'm very confident in what I bring to the table with this type of stuff. So I would love to address next time, what about
in-laws and holidays with kids?
Yeah. So like take what I shared today and add some addendums with the children aspect.
Love it. Love it. Let's not skip the date idea and connection question, though. We want to make sure to leave our listeners with something that they can do and enjoy together. What is the date idea you have for this week?
I think that because we talked about Dancing with the Stars, we talked about how dancing can be vulnerable and there's connection. Mm-hmm. I think we should go off of that. I want to say date idea, maybe you can wrap this into a full-on date, or if you just are parents and you put your kids to bed and you don't have a lot of time to date, you can also do this, which is I think that the listeners should find a upbeat song and a slow song and dance together.
Oh.
So dance silly and fun to an upbeat song and then have like a sway or a slow dance.
We're kind of hugging and just, or dancing like ballroom style or whatever.
Yes.
Just have that closeness.
Yeah. And then just for the sake of like seamless brain for myself to include a connection question.
Yes.
I was thinking that the connection question could be in addition to the date idea, which is if you feel that me bringing up dancing together is very uncomfortable and you don't want to dance together, I think the connection question should be, what would it take for us as a partnership or relationship to be able to dance to a silly and a slow song, or silly being fast,
fun, playful, whatever, it
upbeat,
might be.
party, whatever. What would it take to be able to dance to a song like that? And then if you are able, your connection is a place where you are able to dance to a song like that, then the connection question could be, what was it like and what did you feel doing that exercise together?
I love that.
What
I love
came
that
out for you?
And we'd love to hear what songs you pick. If you want to throw in the comments or post, send us an emails, socials, any of that, let us know what songs you picked. That would be really fun.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll share what our songs will be next episode. All right. Well, this is Charles.
And Clarissa signing off.
Now just remember, for things to get better,
for me and you,
it takes two.
Baby.
Woo!